Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Joe Benezia. I am the chair for Florida Rights of Nature Network, and we are very happy to have you joining us today. This is our third call to prayer or meditation gathering. And I'd like to start by introducing Mr. Gary Robbins. Gary is one of the co-founders for Pachamama Alliance of Southwest Florida, and also a co-founder for the Southwest Florida Reset Center. Gary's going to start us off. Gary?
Thank you, Joe, and welcome to you all. I'd like to have you just take a moment to think about where we are today in our environmental issues and in our spiritual lives as individuals, and realize that many of our religious traditions and spiritual traditions talk to us about circles, about cycles, patterns we can awaken to and learn from and use to transform our lives. The great wisdom of all belief systems seem to have many stories that take us to circles and cycles, many of them used as metaphors for transforming our lives and the world that we live in. At any point, we can become aware of the cycle and we can rejoin it if we have left it. The four cardinal directions are north, east, south, and west, but we also have up, down, and within. And it is the within place that we begin with our hearts. When we begin with our heart and we cycle through the seasons or night and day, we become aware of birth and death, growth. I'm taken by the liminal space that happens between the time that we awaken and the time we arise. It is a rich time for us to be able to take hold of where we are in the beginning of our day and see who we are going to be that day and who we want to be. In our Western civilization, we may be led to want to be very successful, make lots of money, secure our family and our homes. But there is an issue that we have to deal with in our broader Western society of the English language, which has helped create a time or a place for us in which we see things as objects. And as we treat so-called resources as objects, we also then start to treat people as objects. And this is an unsustainable way of life because it does not honor the sacredness and the holiness of Creator's gifts of the universe and the earth. We know in our hearts that all creation is sacred. And we are born with this awareness. But our society has helped us get lost along the way many times. We see so much of creation as objects, and that allows us to treat them in many, many negative ways. Our primary task is to open our hearts to the sacredness of all creation, become co-creators of a sacred evolution of our relationships with all living beings as our brothers and sisters, and to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. We are pleased that you have joined us on this venture. Whatever your current or future vision of the possible positive transformations of our future, we need to own our most awakened way, which from day to day will be unsurpassable. And we invite you to embody that awakened way in all of your relations. May it be so.
Thank you, Gary. Lovely. I would like next to introduce Lou Merritt, who is a writer, a lover and defender of springs in Florida, and a pursuer of the Buddhist path for many, many years. Lou?
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Gary, for that wonderful opening. What you said about the time between waking and actually getting up is something that one of my Buddhist teachers just recently mentioned as a time that we should stop and think about what we can do throughout the day for other people instead of just thinking about ourselves. So that really resonated with me. Thanks a lot. I am just going to talk a little bit about the idea of the relationship that we have with the natural world. One of the concepts that's been stressed by my Buddhist teachers is this idea of interdependence, how we're all connected to, dependent upon, and exist in relationship with Mother Earth and with each other. It's not a subject-object relationship in which human beings and nature are two completely separate things. Rather, it's a relationship that requires us to recognize our interconnections and to acknowledge our own personal and collective responsibilities to maintain a healthy world, not just for ourselves, but for each other. The young man who's the leader of the Karma Kagyu Tibetan Buddhist lineage in which I study, Ogden Trenley Dorji, who's recognized as the 17th Karmapa, has described our environment as the container in which we human beings are the contained. I love this concept because it demonstrates how we depend upon Mother Earth and how our relationship with her requires us to reciprocate or to give back. Karmapa has written, we need to acknowledge that our environment can affect us and we can also affect our environment. Some people have the idea that the environment is so vast and so primordial that nothing we do is actually going to affect it. Unfortunately, that's been proven not to be the case, and we need to begin to acknowledge the aspect of interdependence that is our effect on the environment, even as the environment affects us. So if you've ever spent a day on the water, in the water, or near the water, and felt the water's soothing and even rejuvenating influence, please ask yourself, what can I do to say thank you to the water for what it has given me? There's probably as many answers to this question as there are people attending this Zoom or as there are people in Florida. I suggest that helping with the effort to enshrine a right to clean water for all Floridians in our state constitution, which is what the Right to Clean Water Amendment aims to do, is one thing we could all do for ourselves, for our waters, and for each other. So please think about this idea of our relationship with Mother Earth as you listen to our speakers tonight, and about how you might apply this idea to your own life. We hope these ideas will inspire you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lou. Wonderful. I would now like to introduce Mary Tracy. Mary Tracy is a Buddhist Dharma teacher, and she asked that I share something with you. Let me just put this on the screen. There we go.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you again, everyone. It's my privilege to be with all of you this evening. And I think you'll see all of these words that we're going to speak will be similar in many ways. This reading that I'm going to share with you is outside of my Buddhist tradition. And I think that's one of the wonderful gifts of doing this Right to Clean Water work, is that I have encountered many wonderful people and writings from different faiths, different traditions, different cultures. And it just shows, again, our interdependence, how connected we really all are. This poem is by Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, and he lived from around 1772 to 1810. He was a Hasidic Jew, and he was a bit unusual in his time because he believed in a religious philosophy, which again connects with what we've been saying. He saw closeness to God, and he spoke to God like he would to a friend. So this poem, this prayer, is he speaking to God and to nature as a friend. So he's seeing himself connected with all of this. And he's speaking again for all of us as well. He sees a divinity that's inherent in all beings. So again, this interconnection, this sacredness. And he was what they call like a Jewish meditator. He would go into solitude, he'd go into nature, into caves, and he would meditate. And these prayers, these poems would come out of those meditations. So this one I thought really fit our purposes for today. Grant me the ability to be alone. May it be my custom to go outdoors each day among the trees and the grass, among all growing things, and there may I be alone, enter into prayer, to talk with the zone to whom I belong. May I express there everything in my heart, and may all the foliage of the field, all grasses, trees, and plants awake at my coming to send the powers of their life into the words of my prayer, so that my prayer and speech are made whole through the life and spirit of all growing things, which are made one by their transcendent source. May I then pour out the words of my heart before your presence like water, O God, and lift up my hands to you in worship on my behalf and that of all my children. Thank you. I thought this was just beautiful. Again, he's speaking for all of us. Thank you.
I would like to share something from Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver is commonly regarded as the most popular poet in America. But I am not going to read any of her poetry. I want to share with you some of her prose. It comes from a book that she wrote later on in her life. It's called Upstream, and this is what she writes. Knowledge has entertained me, and it has shaped me, and it has failed me. Something in me still starves. In what is probably the most serious inquiry of my life, I have begun to look past reason, past the provable, in other directions. Now I think there is only one subject worth my attention, and that is the precognition of the spiritual side of the world, and within this recognition, the condition of my own spiritual state. I am not talking about having faith necessarily, although one hopes to. What I mean by spirituality is not theology, but attitude. Such interest nourishes me beyond the finest compendium of facts. In my mind, in any comparison of demonstrated truths and unproven but vivid intuition, the truths lose. I would therefore write a kind of elemental poetry that doesn't just avoid indoors, but doesn't even see the doors that lead inward, to laboratories, to textbooks, to knowledge. I would not talk about the wind and the oak tree and the leaf on the oak tree, but on their behalf. I would talk about the owl and the thunderworm and the daffodil and the red-spotted newt as accompanying spirits as well as bodies. I would say that the fox stepping out over the snow has nerves as fine as mine, and a better courage. I would write praise poems that might serve as comforts, reminders, or even cautions, if needed, to wayward minds and unawakened hearts. I would say that there exist 1,000 unbreakable links between each of us and everything else, and that our dignity and our chances are one. The farthest star and the mud at our feet are a family, and there is no decency or sense in honoring one thing or a few things and then closing the list. The pine tree, the leopard, the Plate River, and ourselves, we are at risk together, or we are on our way to a sustainable world together. We are each other's destiny. I could not be a poet without the natural world. Someone else could, but not me. For me, the door to the woods is the door to the temple. What she says there resonates with me deeply. I certainly cannot put it any better than this wonderful poet just did. The only thing that might come close is to rely on another poet, and that's what I want to share with you right now. So this is a very short poem by Gary Snyder. Gary Snyder, very much influenced by Buddhist thought. If any of you are familiar with haiku, well, this little poem may remind you of haiku. By Gary Snyder. In the blue night, frost haze, the sky glows with the moon, pine tree tops bend snow blue, fade into sky, frost, starlight. The creak of boots, rabbit tracks, deer tracks. What do we know?
One of
Haiku,
my all-time favorites, Joseph. Thank you.
that particular poem?
Yes, oh yes.
One of my favorites too. For those of you who aren't all that familiar with haiku, there's no editorializing in it. It's supposed to be just image. I'll let the images do the speaking, and that is all image up until the very end, where we get a little spiritual and say, well, what the heck do we know compared to all of that stuff? So, Gary Snyder.
That's great.
I would now like to introduce Elise Brady. Elise is an artist. She is a Laudato Si animator, and she is a creation care minister with the Creation Care Ministry up here in the St. Augustine Diocese. So, Elise.
So thanks, Joe, and thanks, everybody. Your words have just been so inspiring. It's amazing that this advocacy work has engendered such heartfelt, emotional responses, and I think that really goes to show how important the work is. And so as we know, it's the season of creation, and if I may, I would just like to start, I'm kind of just doing a little change up here, Joe, but I'd like to start with just a greeting from Pope Francis. It's a season of creation message that he shared. It's just a small excerpt from a very long document, but it's obviously very appropriate for what we're doing. So the message begins, "Dear brothers and sisters, let justice and peace flow like a mighty river." That's the theme of this year's season of creation. This evocative image speaks to us of what God desires. God wants justice to reign. It is as essential to our life as God's children as water is essential for our physical survival. When we seek first the kingdom of God, maintaining a right relationship with God, humanity, and nature, then justice and peace can flow like a never-failing stream of pure water, nourishing humanity and all creatures. During this season of creation, we must resolve to transform our hearts, our lifestyles, and the public policies ruling our societies in order to create a more sustainable world for generations to come. Truly, so much can be done if we come together to irrigate the life of our marvelous planet and our human family. So let us join hands and take bold steps to let justice and peace flow throughout our world. And if I may, I'd like to follow that up with a water blessing that we said during a rosary walk for the earth at the start of this season of creation. And it took place at the Mission Nombre de Dios in St. Augustine, which is the site of where the first Catholic Mass was said in the New World. And so this comes from the Laudato Si prayer book, and it's called A Water Blessing Prayer by Virginia Fifield, who is a Mercy Associate from Akwesasne, which is a Mohawk reservation, straddles the US and Canada.
At
And it
least
goes-
give me a moment, and I'll see if I'm able to.
Sure, absolutely.
And this is one of your paintings, Elise?
This is a piece that was inspired by an evening stroll down at the ocean by Marineland, where there's a lot of coquina rock that lines the waterline there. And it's called Ocean Vanishing. So the water blessing prayer begins. Creator, we turn our attention to acknowledge and give thanks for your gift of water. The mighty seas, the calm lakes, the rivers, the streams, and the rain that falls to refresh our sister Mother Earth. At the beginning of creation, you sanctified the waters. Your gift is indispensable to all life on earth. It grows our food. It sustains all living things physically. When we are in need of spiritual strength, you instructed us to go down to the water and wash our spirits clean. Awaken the heart of those who exploit your gift for profit, and forgive those of us who take your gift for granted. Help us to remember the preciousness of your gift and give us the wisdom to use your gift wisely and share it equitably. Aho. And aho is means something to the effect of, since it was uttered and it is so. And I just might add that when we said this poem or this blessing at our rosary walk, we were standing on a bridge over a beautiful lagoon. And just as we were in the middle of the prayer, the skies opened up and it rained on us. So I felt like it was the good Lord answering back with a sense of humor. But thank you so much for letting me share that with you.
Thank you. That was terrific. I would like to close us out today with a little music and a little image. And great thanks to photographer John Moran for letting us use some of his absolutely gorgeous photographs here. Make sure, we're going to get sound, let me see.
you.